Good morning. Welcome to the Big O Money Show. I am Andrew Galvin, your host this morning, coming at you live from Stonegate Studios here with my trusty co-host, Dr. Tony Shore, or I shouldn't say doctor. You only play one on the radio. Sorry,
Yeah, I
Tony.
play one on. I'm not a real doctor, but I do play one on the radio. Yeah. Thanks. Well, thanks for having me on the show today, Andrew. And it's
Yeah,
good to see
Tony.
you. Bill is out gallivanting today, so it's you and I.
That's right. That's right. 2 weeks in a row. That's crazy.
Yeah, that's good. No, I like that. I like that. You always bring a unique perspective. I mean, Bill has his own style, and
Sure.
I know a lot of our listeners out there love that. But you bring a lot of good hard facts and your own unique style as well.
Mhm.
And of course, you and I now have known each other for quite a while.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, we were just talking before the show, Tony, and it was kind of funny thinking back to some of the gradient trips and things we've done together. So
Yeah,
it's been a lot of fun over the years. But
it has.
I know this week has been a little tumultuous just in terms of some of the headlines. So I kind of like to talk today about the government shutdown. I think that'd be a timely topic for our listeners. And
Yeah.
there's a lot of information going on out there. A lot of people are saying a lot of different things. And I think it's really important to go back to the facts, to get
Okay.
people situated. So
Yeah, government shutdowns, it sounds really
sounds
scary. And for some it is a really bad thing, and for some things it's really bad. The news, of course, is going to always take it over the top.
yes.
We'll see what ends up happening here, but I'm glad we're talking about the shutdown. It did just happen a few days ago.
Yep.
And people are wondering, how is this going to affect me? What's going on out there? What are the actual facts, right?
Yeah.
And I think that's important to figure out. So I'm glad we're talking about this today. So what do you have for us on the government shutdown?
Well, Tony, I think it's important to start off the conversation with what actually is shutting down, right? Because when we hear the government is shutting down, that means a lot of different things. And depending upon your age, your income bracket, your who you listen to, you get a lot of different subsets of facts, right? And so what is actually going to be closing, and for most individuals, if you're in the private sector and you're not really dealing with government on a super day-to-day basis, you probably won't notice much of a change in your personal life. They're going to continue to have air traffic controllers staffed in, airports. You're going to go through TSA as you normally would. The big one that I think for our line of work that, is going to maybe change the game a little bit is the statistics that the Department of Labor, some of those other branches put out. There's going to be a big jobs report that comes out or did come out, I guess, by the time people listen to this episode, that may be delayed because of some of that data. They didn't have enough people on staff to compile it all and get it into the report in time. So that's a little bit of a concern for us, but at the same time, I don't necessarily think that really changes much of anything for our listeners on a day-to-day basis, right, Tony?
Right.
I mean, are you not going to go to work because that data didn't come out, when it was supposed to? Probably not, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it hasn't, for the majority of Americans, they're not going to see a direct effect, at least initially. Some government workers that are going to be asked to come to work because they're considered essential,
Yep.
but they won't get a paycheck until the government goes back
Yep.
to work and the shutdown ends. Because people sometimes then call in sick or don't show up. You
Right.
might have longer lines at the airports.
Patience is always the name of the game, especially when you're at the airport.
Yep.
But I mean, the post office is still going to run. People are still going to continue to get mail through all of this, so it's going to be those more niche sectors. And I certainly don't mean to downplay it either, Tony, because I don't want listeners that, maybe have been impacted by this saying, well, gosh, Andrew sounds like he really doesn't care about the government shutting down,
Right.
and that's certainly not what I want to portray or what I'm talking about. I just mean for individuals, when you see the big scary headlines, let's look
Sure.
at the facts behind the headline before we start to freak out, hey, let's move our portfolio to cash until the government comes back in operation until they pass a spending bill, right?
Yeah. Yeah, and because of the delay, I read, I believe it was either Fox Business or CNBC that said this morning that the government shut down the U.S. The Besant said the U.S. GDP could possibly take a hit
Mhm.
because of a government shutdown, and because of that, the shutdown could cement additional Fed interest rate cuts. And so those are interesting. It's trickling down. It affects different areas. It's not the
Mhm.
sky is falling. In fact, I expected the markets to really tank because of the government shutdown or react.
Very muted. And in fact, the market
Yeah,
is up.
really muted. In fact, between the end of the day yesterday and today, they actually hit a new high.
Yep.
As of the recording of the show, they hit a high,
Mhm.
it's over 6,700. It had dropped down to 6,500, and then it's back up to a record. So it is interesting to see the market where it hasn't really dipped that much,
Yeah.
and it's still doing really well, which is somewhat surprising, but it is. And we'll see if the GDP or the jobs numbers not coming out. We'll see how that affects things, but I think that unless you're a federal employee, you might not see any change in anything
Yeah.
because of this. But I do feel for the federal employees whenever this happens. It's a shame
Absolutely.
that our political leaders can't agree, and I blame both sides. Anytime the government shuts down, it's everybody in government is to blame somewhat. So
Well, and we're supposed to have adults in Congress that are working for our benefit, and
we're what now?
yeah, I know.
Wait, what?
And
Adults?
and again, I'm a little younger. Maybe I'm not as cynical or jaded as I need to be, but I would just hope that something will get done here in short order to
I
pass
think it
some
will.
sort of spending bill.
I
I
would
would
hope
think so
so.
too.
Yeah,
Um,
I would hope so.
and what they find on that GDP front too, Tony, is even if there's a little bit of a dip in the GDP numbers,
Right.
they actually find that it just gets pushed further back into the year a lot of times in those numbers. And so it's not like we're missing the GDP. It's more like it gets delayed to, maybe another month or another quarter, potentially depending upon when those numbers fall. So maybe we see for October that things came in a little bit under estimates, but then November, December, things tick up a little bit, which, I think coincides with a good potential for maybe a Santa Claus rally this year. Or I know Keith Gangle, one of the portfolio managers that you work with, Tony,
Yep.
he was saying maybe it's not a Santa Claus rally this year. Maybe it's an elf rally, a little bit shorter than a Santa Claus, but still a rally in the market to go into the end of the year, right? Which is good. I mean, that's
Yeah.
good for portfolios. That's good for our clients.
Yep.
That's good for our listeners. So I don't think that the government shutdown is necessarily going to have as much of an impact on the market as maybe some people saying it will or it won't. Um, so the other thing that I want to talk about, is in years where government shutdowns have happened, the average S&P 500 return in that month is that it's up about 0.5%. So
Yeah.
that's another indication to me that the government shutdown, while I don't like it, while I think we should try and find a way to pass a spending bill, and get things done, I also think that it's not going to impact people's portfolios on the same level that everyone is saying it will.
Right. Yeah, I would agree with you there, and I see the logic behind that, and I'm glad you pointed that out. A lot of people out there, I think, Andrew, are concerned. A lot of our listeners are either maybe headed for retirement or in retirement, and Social Security will not be affected. Social
Also,
Security payments will continue.
and
So,
Medicare filings, we're
and
coming up on
Medicare,
Medicare season,
yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So was talking to Brenda Dinan and Bill Kaiser today before I was recording, and just had mentioned that, what do you think that's going to do? And they said, well, kind of similar to the airport discussion we just talked about, Tony, patience, maybe a little bit more patience, because if some of these people get furloughed or have to get back pay, potentially then you see the people that call out sick until they get their pay again, some of those types of things. But overall, it shouldn't dramatically change the game for individuals that are filing. So
Yeah,
good.
really, the federal workers are going to bear the brunt of the impact, and so if you're a federal employee or have a family member or friend who's a federal employee, that could be a tough situation.
Oh, sure.
They've talked, in addition to the government shutdown and not getting paychecks until they figure it out. There's also possibility of some government layoffs that we've heard talking about. So
Yep.
we'll keep an eye on that, but usually these things don't last long. That's the other piece of good news, right? I mean, the last one was in, I don't know when it was, 2018. It hasn't been that long ago. I think it was 2018.
Yeah, it's 2018 to 2019, and it was a 34-day shutdown.
Oh, that was a big one. Yeah,
that was a big one. But it's interesting because during that shutdown, the S&P 500 saw the biggest increase during a government shutdown than it's ever seen.
It's crazy.
10.3%, Tony.
Wow. Just wow. Yeah, I mean, that's amazing. So no concern for the markets, really, at least if past history is any indication, but it isn't always. We'll have to see. But I'm glad you're pointing these things out. Some national parks will be closed. Some states won't have the funding to keep their parks open because they get federal funding.
Yep.
Some will, but with limited services,
That's
not
right.
as much staff. So, that's a play it by ear. I've heard that in certain areas, marriage, like in DC, maybe marriage certificates, marriage licenses. You can't get a marriage license. Will the government shut down? That's a possibility. I read that that's a possibility, but the shutdown is interesting. We'll keep an eye on that. I'm glad you're talking about it. You also wanted to mention markets. We kind of have, how the markets are being affected. I just keep, every time I happen to look over at the ticker, it's like, record high. S&P hit another record high today. I'm like,
it's been a good year. It's been a great year.
Yeah, the headline I read this morning on CNBC was S&P hits record high again. And then I look and it's down, a tick. Now it's in the red just a little, but you can't watch it like that. You can't time the market anyway. It's going to go up and down.
Yeah.
As long as the trajectory, over the last 100 years has been up, but there's been dips in there, right? So.
Right. And I think that, going back to the government shutdown discussion, if we start to see this thing drag on a little bit, like we just talked about that 34-day shutdown, I do think that could potentially provide some catalyst for some frothiness, potentially some volatility as we go through October. Sure. And I think September, October, traditionally speaking, has been two of the most volatile months in the market just in general.
Yeah. September is usually fairly volatile, but we did not have volatility this September. So we'll see if the government shutdown fuels that or causes enough of a bump in the GDP to really affect the markets, which, so far it hasn't, and it looks like it might not. But again, it's how long it lasts, and no one knows at this point because, I just read there's a real stalemate.
Yeah, and it's interesting because I heard that there were 3 Democrats that went over with Republicans. Yep. There were a couple of Republicans that went over with Democrats. So it's kind of interesting how this is shaking out. But I think going back to individuals' portfolios then, Tony, what does that mean? Well, we talked about it last week. You stay in the game, right?
Right.
Through the good, through the bad, you stay in the game. And if you're in retirement and you say, well, how do I protect myself against some of this potential volatility? That's when we go back and we say, hey, how are you allocated? Do we need to be concerned about,
are all your assets in the market or in high risk things, right?
Yeah. Or do we need a little bit more safe money? And this is why we have safe money, because, you look at the market this year. Well, the year to date is 13.5%. something like that, Tony.
Yeah, pretty good.
As of today. But think about March and April when it was down 10% on the S&P.
Yeah.
Were people as excited about market performance then as they are now?
Some people got out, like they
Yeah.
just got out and went to all cash when, especially if you have time. I mean, unless you're in retirement or headed into retirement
Right.
and you have any amount of time at all on your side, you don't want to get out. The people who panicked in April and got out of the market,
Missed it.
not only would it have benefited them to stay in, I mean, it would have actually really helped them. I mean, they would have done really well to stay in.
Yeah.
Because then the market shot way up and hit record highs again. So
Exactly.
that's just the way the market works. You got to be in it long term. Although if you have money that you need to live on,
Right.
like in retirement, you can't have
Different
it all in the
story.
market. You've got to have somewhere your principal's protected, where you've got built-in growth that it'll at least keep up with inflation. And so I love how you balance it for your clients. You just look at, hey, based on your personal situation, based on where you're at and when you need what, which is different for everybody. Some people, next year, we're going to travel around the world. We need X amount of dollars, or we're going to take the grandkids to Disney World, or we're going to buy a camper. Well, you have to have that in your retirement income plan.
That's all part of the plan.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. And the only way to get a solid plan in place like that and make sure you're going to be able to do these things without running out of money before, you want that money to last as long as you do, you got to work with a trusted financial services professional.
Yeah. So if there's anybody that's listening today and they say, well, that's interesting, I don't know if I have that, give us a call. I mean, no cost, complimentary second opinion consultation, whatever you call it. We want to sit down with you for a couple hours in a couple different appointments, put together a plan for you, and it's personalized to your specific life. I mean, what do you want? What do you need? So if that's something listeners would be interested in, feel free to give us a ring. 402-557-6730 is our phone number here. Justine will pick up and get a time on the calendar for you to come in and sit down with us.
All right. Hey, that sounds great, Andrew. And you've got a great team there. I mean, you cover the gamut, taxes, estate planning. You have CPAs there you work with, and estate planning attorneys, and trusted fiduciaries, financial fiduciaries who are going to look out for your best interests and look at the big picture and say, okay, how can we get a plan in place that's going to work for you? And then you can actively manage people's money. And you work with a lot of great companies and you're independent, so you can look at all the options. You're not beholden to one company like a lot of them out there are. And I think that's really important, isn't it?
Yeah. I mean, because there's a lot of different things, a lot of different types of products out there. And, I think we as financial advisors, from time to time, you'll hear somebody say, well, I don't like this and I don't like that, and I think the reality of the situation, Tony, is depending upon what a person needs, there's a reason why that product exists, right? And so pigeonhole somebody in to say, let's go all stock market, bond, and we hate annuities, and so we're just not going to do it. Well, right now, annuity caps are looking at a 7.25, 7.5 on the S&P. Bonds are paying 4.5, 4.7. What do you want? And get the principal protection over here, whereas bond prices are going to fluctuate a little bit.
Yeah, and there's pros and cons to every single asset allocation, whether it's putting it in a bank account, a CD, a MIGA, an annuity, cash value life insurance, the bonds, money market accounts, the stock market, real estate. So there's going to be pros and cons, but what best fits your situation? And like for liquidity, when are you going to need the money, and how are you going to, what will keep up with inflation for you? So that is, and the risk tolerance that you have. So all those things have to be looked at. And like you said, if somebody just says, all I want to do is sell you insurance products and annuities, that's all they try to do. When all you have is a hammer, everything looks like a nail, and you don't want to do that, right? My dad always told me, when all you have is a hammer, everything looks like a nail. And so you want somebody can look at the whole toolbox and do what's in your best interest and has that fiduciary responsibility. And
Yes.
you guys are held to that standard. You're audited. And if all the texts and emails and communication with your client is audited on a regular basis, and if you aren't recommending what's in the client's best interests, then
we could get in trouble.
You could get in trouble. But you guys always do. You look at what's in the client's best interest, and that's what you've been doing for years and years in the area, helping so many people out here. Now, Andrew, what else did you want to talk about today?
So there's a couple different things. Number one, I know we kind of touched on it last week a little bit, but just a friendly reminder, it is getting darn close to open enrollment, Tony.
Yeah.
So if our listeners out there have questions on their Medicare plans, and they probably do because there's some big changes that are going to be coming down this year. Bill Kaiser, Brenda Dinan in our office, they are both licensed Medicare agents, and they would love to sit down and review your plan with you, make sure you have the coverage that you need. And will continue to need over the next 12 months, right? As we go into 2026. So if somebody needs something from them, they can pick up the phone, 402-557-6730, or go to www.paradvisor.com. Feel free to request a consultation on there. You can click on the contact us link and shoot an email over. We'd be happy to help you out, because those changes, I mean, they're big this year, Tony. I'm not licensed, so I can't truly talk about the Medicare side. But it's listening to both Bill and Brenda. There's going to be some things that people are going to want to make sure that they understand going into 2020.
You can't just leave it set, leave it go this year. You have to work with a Medicare specialist because of all the changes. You want to make sure that you're getting the best deal. And there's some changes that will help you if you make some changes, save some money. And because some things are going to cost a lot more. So you want to make sure your plan is the best you can get, and the coverage is the best you can get for what you need and what medications you need. So make sure that you set up and there's a no charge, no obligation consultation. And the sooner the better. Their schedules are filling up, but try to set something up with Brenda Dinan or Bill Kaiser in the office. That they are Medicare specialists. This is what they do. Help folks out with this. Make sure you're in the right Advantage plan. Make sure you're not overpaying, and see what's changes are going to happen to the plan you currently have. I think that's really, really important. And again, Medicare annual enrollment period where you can make these changes and do things about it is October 15th through December 7th. But it's past October 1st now that we're in October. You can set up that meeting because they can talk about it and come up with the plan. It just technically they kick into effect when the actual changes can be submitted is the 15th, but don't wait until then to schedule.
No,
do it now.
15th, it's going to be everybody and their brother is going to be calling. And we're already seeing an uptick here in just the last couple of days. And we also have Medicare meetings in our conference room.
If you want to do it in a group setting, you guys do that as well, right?
So Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, throughout the entire Medicare season, Brenda and Bill are basically tag teaming or switching off on those meetings. So if you're not really sure what you need, but you kind of want to hear some information and maybe don't want that, I don't think they Sammy salesman anybody anyway, but if you are more comfortable in that group setting, please give us a ring, 402-557-6730. Get on that schedule for those meetings, because we'd love to see you.
Awesome. Well, hey, we're out of time for today's show. It flew by. You did a great job today, Andrew. A lot of great information. Let our listeners know one more time that phone number. 402-557-6730 or paradvisor.com. That's paradvisor.com. All right, and that does it for today's episode of the Big O Money Show with our host, Andrew Galvin.